Hello everyone and welcome to today's GP Strategies webinar. I'm Danielle and I'll be hosting today's event. We've got a really good session planned with you today with Noel Cocker, who will be discussing how to embed performance support into your user adoption strategy. But before we get started, I just need to go over a few housekeeping items. So firstly, everyone's phone lines have been placed in listen-only mode, and this is just to eliminate any disruptions. If you've got any questions during the presentation, you can submit them through the Q&A module, which can be found on the right-hand side of your WebEx panel. We'll try and answer these at the end of the session if we've got time, but if we haven't, Noel will be sending out a follow-up email to everybody if there are any questions that you have. And finally, the slides and the recording of the event will be emailed to you, and they'll also be available along with all presentations on our webinar recordings page, and this can be found at gpstrategiesltd.com. Okay, so let's get started. I'd like to introduce you to today's presenter, Noel Cocker. Noel is the Consulting Director for Platform Adoption Services in EMEA within GP Strategies, and he's responsible for the consulting division and the managing of the success of our clients. He's got a vast experience in working with a number of training tools to ensure customer satisfaction, from managing installation to implementation, including creating document standards and developer learning paths. So Noel, thank you for being here today, and I would like to hand it over to you.
Thank you very much, Danielle, for such a nice welcome. Good morning, good afternoon and good evening, depending on where you are in the world. Welcome to this short session on embedding performance support into your user adoption strategies. Before we start, I thought I'd share this little quote with you from Albert Einstein. Never memorize something you can look up. And this seemed like the perfect description of what performance support was about in its earliest form. So, without further ado, let's get started. I wanted to start by considering why performance support is becoming an ever important component as part of an overall user adoption strategy. Irrespective of your initiative, which could be a large complex ERP implementation such as SAP, Oracle, Infor and so on, or rolling out the latest version of Office 365, or even a compliance-based regulatory program, the ability for employees to embed knowledge back in the workplace and do their jobs effectively will be achieved much more quickly if your learning strategy includes a performance support component. One of the biggest challenges leaders are facing in organisations is finding talent. And it's not just about finding good talent and bringing them into the business, it's finding that talent with the appropriate skills to support the overall business growth. Additionally, as well as finding good talent, technology cycles are accelerating. Business models are changing and the nature of work is evolving fast, to the point where it's hard for employees to keep up to date with the pace of change. It's predicted that by 2020, which is only next year, believe it or not, 53% of businesses will be running cloud solutions. And in particular, with the emergence of those cloud technologies, where we have on average 4 software releases per year, trying to keep up to date with that is becoming more and more of a challenge for the workforce. This means that the information that was valid 3 months ago when you originally created your training material, your communications material, etc., may no longer be valid because it's been updated or changed because of that quarterly update. So, the big question is, how do we help the workforce do their jobs effectively with that pace of change? This study by Burson paints a graphic picture of what it's like to be an employee today. This picture is quite busy. There's a lot of text and numbers on here. I'm going to call out a few of the key points, and it will be in the slide pack that you're sent over the next 24 hours. The key things that strike me here are that employees are overwhelmed and distracted. They're becoming increasingly impatient with doing their jobs, and the study actually showed that 2/3 of employees complain they do not have enough time to do their job in their standard working hours. So if we think about that, Standard working day is between 7 and 8 hours, and people are saying they don't have enough time to do their job. The internet is over 36 years old this year, and if we compare that to when it first came out 36 years ago, employees now access the internet on average 27 times per year to access information, compared to 5 times a day in the early days of its inception. And as I mentioned, a lot of that time is looking for supporting training, information and text. If you think about when you're doing your day job and you're maybe in Excel and you can't remember how to do a formula, you'll very quickly just open up your web browser, type into Google or your preferred search engine and say, how do I do an average formula in Excel? Or how do you do something a little more fancy in PowerPoint? Mobile phones are similarly locked on average 9 times per hour during a working day. And again, like the internet, it's used for checking information. How many of you at the moment are actually checking your phone? So it's no wonder that along with doing their job in a typical work week, the study revealed that approximately 1% of employees complain that they only have a small amount of time to do training. Some other key information which really struck me from this slide, or this research from Burson, was that workers are interrupted every 5 minutes during the normal working day from their colleagues, from telephone calls, from emails. And 30% of permanent employees now work away from what we'd class as a main office location. They're either in the field or working from home. And 80% of people surveyed as part of this study actually said that they do the majority of their learning through on-the-job interactions. And we'll come back onto that a little bit later when we start to consider the 70-20-10 model. The study also showed that employees want flexibility in how they learn. It's no longer enough for just to offer classroom training or e-learning. They want to take control of their own development and be empowered to do so. And that's the key thing for me. Users now want to be empowered with their own learning. They want to do it at their own time and at their own pace and when they're ready for us. This is backed up by a recent survey that was done by, or a report that came out from LinkedIn Learning, which is called the 2018 Workplace Learning Report. And they found that 68% of the people that they surveyed prefer to learn at work as part of their day job. 58% preferred to learn at their own pace. And finally, 49% showed that they wanted to learn at points of need. So they wanted to learn when it was relevant to them, when they were actually in an application. And just take a minute to think about how you learn when you're doing your day-to-day job. Learning at the point of need is key to any user adoption strategy. Unlike formal training, which could be traditional classroom or e-learning, which requires users to step away from their productive work into that safe environment, performance support embeds into the application business processes and helps the employee to apply that knowledge, adapt to change, or solve problems in real time. So let's look at what we mean by performance support. The term performance support, as we know it today, is associated to somebody called Gloria Gary, and she was a key proponent of what's known as electronic performance support over 30 years ago. And her view back then was that performance support focuses on work itself, whilst training focuses on the learning required to do the work. Filtering resources so people get what they need while actively working is the goal. And again, that's a really key thing for me. Filtering resources so people get what they need while actively working is the goal. And that was over 30 years ago. And if we think about how technology has accelerated over the last 30 years, we're now able to do that properly. So in my mind, performance support should enable users in the workplace. However, it's not a replacement for formal training. When we're talking about performance support as well, we also need to make sure that we remember this is personalised. If we think about YouTube and use that as an example, over 10 years of content is uploaded into YouTube every day. And whilst YouTube can be used as part of your performance support strategy, it still needs to focus on the points of need. Just providing access within your business to YouTube will take time and effort from the end user's perspective to actually find what they're looking for. And that's similar to LinkedIn Learning. Giving access to LinkedIn Learning is a fantastic tool. It's something which has lots of very, very good content on it. But from an end user's perspective, it takes time for me to find what I need to actually do my job. So in today's digital landscape, we have the opportunity to deliver performance support that's just in time, so employees can use it whilst they work. And whilst we think about things like quick reference guides and fact sheets, which are all very useful and still common today, even though we are becoming more digital, a well-executed performance support solution, and it will allow employees to get what they need, to interrupting that workflow, or leaving the application, or even the task that they're actually working on, and it will actually come back and give them the information that they need there and then. It also needs to be just enough content, so that employees only have to deal with the current task and they receive the most relevant information at that moment. They don't want to have lots of other cluttered information around them when they just need to know how to move on to the next task. What do I need to enter into this field? Why am I doing this? If we think about the early days, and a really good example for me in terms of performance support, or an early part of performance support, was Microsoft Office. For those of you who are of a similar age to me, when Microsoft brought out Office 97, and I think it ran till about 2003, they had a tool called Office Assistant, and it used to be a little paperclip which popped up when you opened up Microsoft Word or PowerPoint, and it asked us if we wanted help. That was a really early example of performance support. However, it was cluttered and didn't give us the information that we needed at the time. You maybe open up a Word document and it would say, it looks like you're typing a letter, when I've not started to type anything. However, the thinking was there around the tool and how it was going to help users adopt to using the tool. So let's take a look at some of the resources that can be used within a performance support strategy. This diagram shows the typical 70-20-10 model. And most of you will know, who are on this webinar, that 10% is formal training, 20% is working with others, which can be through social or online collaboration, and 70% of learning is done on the job. And this is where performance support can deliver real benefit to the user and the organisation. Now, as we mentioned earlier, in the Burson study, 80% of people who were surveyed said they preferred to learn whilst they're doing their job. So the percentages here are quite arbitrary, and your strategy might actually vary in terms of the percentage. But what's important is that you think about what's needed and you include performance support within your strategy. Some of the performance support assets are shown here, and you may use all of them or you may use some of them. That will depend on your business, your users, and what you're actually rolling out. So, what are the actual benefits of performance support? Well, firstly, and one of the key things for me, is the need to train everything is no longer necessary because you'll be providing support long after the event. As we mentioned earlier, formal training, traditional training, whichever you choose to call it, is still of huge benefit to users. However, it allows us to change the way that we train the users, and we can teach them the things in that formal training that they need to know immediately to do their job. It enables users to learn at their own pace and when they need it. If users have the support when they need it, they will have the confidence to use the solutions whilst building knowledge and skills doing the job. My experience has shown that they are more efficient and competent much more quickly than those that have just had a traditional training approach. And as a result of implementing effective performance support solutions, organisations can reduce help desk calls by up to 62%. And as well as reducing those help desk calls, it actually reduces unnecessary support costs. And finally, the key goal of effective end-user adoption is an effective workforce with solid skills and knowledge to do their job. And ultimately, we want to build speed to competence as quickly as possible for those users. One of our performance solutions within my business area, Platform Adoption, is GPWise, Workforce Improvement Solutions for the Enterprise. And this is a service offering that we have using digital learning and a user enablement solution powered by SAP's Enable Now. Now you'll receive some information in this with the email, which has the PowerPoint and the WebEx record or webinar recording rather, and it will also have a link to our GPWise website, so you can actually see how performance support works in real time in one of the videos that's contained within that site. And it might be useful for you to have a look at to bring this into a little bit more context. So, to wrap up, just some key points that I think I'd like to share with you just to take away. As it says there, performance support is key to successful end-user adoption, and hopefully over the last 15 minutes or so, I've been able to take you through some of those. It should be a key component of your strategy. So regardless of when you write your strategy, you should be thinking about performance support and how users can continue to access content in real time. It should be delivered at the point of need, so when users actually need that support and help. It should be delivered in the workflow, so when they're going through that process, it takes them on to the next steps and they understand where it's at without them having to come out of the application. And it should be delivered anytime and anywhere. If we think of the way that businesses are run now, you have multiple offices, people work remotely, we have people that work out in the field. They should be able to access it from their mobile devices, as well as their standard PCs and laptops. And it should just have enough content. So providing the content that's meaningful to the task at hand and minimizing the need to having to wade through reams and reams of content before they find what they need. So I'd like to thank you for joining. I'm going to hand back over to Danielle. I'm not sure how we're doing for time at the moment. I think we're maybe just on the 20-minute mark, but we'll see if we have any questions from anybody out there. And my details are shown at the end here, and will also be sent out to you as part of the pack that you'll receive over the next 24 hours. So if you did want to reach out and have more questions, please feel free to do so. Thanks, Danielle. How are we doing?
Yeah, thank you, Noel. We have unfortunately run out of time. I think we can just quickly squeeze in one question. Somebody has asked, in your experience, when should a performance support strategy be written or considered?
Oh, wow, what a really good question. So, ultimately, the performance support strategy could be considered and written at any time. However, if you're embarking on a new initiative or a new program, and you're starting to think about writing a training needs analysis, or you're thinking about doing your training strategy, I would consider it then. If I'm working with a client and we're looking at doing a training strategy, I will always include performance support in there. And similarly, with doing a training needs analysis, that's not to say you can't retrospectively think about performance support. You may have tools already in the business that you can start to think about using to support that, and you could write your performance support strategy now to support those.
Great, thanks, Noel. If anybody does have any questions, as Noel said, please do reach out to him. His contact details are on screen now. But if we start wrapping things up, so thanks, Noel, and thank you to everyone who attended today. The recording and the slides will be sent to everybody with to the email address that you registered with. This does take 24 hours, though. Thank you for attending then, and we hope to see you again on another GP Strategies webinar. So have a great day, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Take care and have a good afternoon.